Our first scholar and opening the batting today for the returning scholars is Tom Levitt. Tom is a Treherne scholar, a freelance journalist and researcher, and is currently working as a research associate for the Royal Society of Arts Food, Farming and Countryside Commission, and lives with his family in Cheshire. His scholarship travels have taken him to North America and Europe to explore the future of cow's milk and how to improve its value in the eyes of the consumer, under the title, Put a Label on It, Why the Future of Milk is a Branded One. Tom.
Thank you for the introduction. Almost a century ago now, my great-grandfather, Frank Levitt, was selling his family's milk at a local market in Cambridgeshire. He had switched from pigs to cows to capitalise on the growing demand for milk, driven by a consumer demand and a new UK-wide school milk scheme. Almost everyone in this room, I imagine, grew up on milk and cereal, and you probably had it for breakfast this morning too. But since its consumption heyday in the 1950s, 60s and 70s, per capita consumption of milk in the UK has fallen by 1/3. The decline will continue, with more than 1/3 of those aged under 35 saying they are cutting back on consuming dairy. How, the dairy industry has asked, can we get more young people drinking milk again? Well, I've spent the past 2 years travelling around Europe and North America, interviewing hundreds of people within the dairy industry and the wider food industry. My message to you today is that there is no way back. I can tell you that the days of fridges full of milk are on the decline. And in fact, even for breakfast this morning, I was unsurprised to go down to the buffet. I don't know if everyone went down for the buffet this morning. And there was whole milk, semi-skim milk, and then there was almond milk and soya milk. That's not even unusual anymore. But this needn't be a cause for doom and gloom. My message to you today proposes a solution. Now, some people might have expected me, with a day job as a sometime journalist at The Guardian, to talk to you about veganism, or perhaps non-dairy milk alternatives, and how cows are causing climate change. These are all challenges for the dairy sector, but tackling them alone is not going to save milk. The key point that I want to make to you today is that the market for milk is evolving but not disappearing. What milk needs is to be valued by consumers, and it will only get there through brands and innovation. The industry needs to grab the opportunities of the future and not hanker for the past. The story of milk in the last century was about safety, nutrition and affordability. But decades of standardisation has now left it with little value. Margins are tight for processors, and a typical carton of milk on the supermarket shelf is not going to win any design awards. It has long been a commodity, but the retail use of it as a loss leader has squeezed its market price still further. You can praise retailers for offering milk contracts with market premiums, but supermarket own label, however many pictures of happy cows or farmers you put on it, or Wellington boots in the case of some companies, will never add significant value. As one farmer in Wisconsin told me, milk is poor man's food now. As well as being a low-value product, it's also getting left behind by consumer eating habits. Veganism and cutting back on dairy is a strong trend. Nearly 1/5 of adults are already purchasing dairy substitute products. And as I explained earlier, 1/3 of people under the age of 35 say they are cutting back on consuming dairy. In the US, where I travelled, soya, oat, and almond milks have grown rapidly with sales of $2 billion last year. The figure in the UK, I think, is around 300 million, if people are interested. Not many people are vegan, but a lot of people have started being more opinionated about their food choices. They are interested in where their food comes from, how it is made, and what it does for you, or what it does for them. It has led to questions that dairy farming finds hard to answer. Why do cows need to be housed permanently indoors? Why are male calves still being killed on farm? Is milk as essential for my diet and my health as I've been told and brought up to believe? And can we avoid dangerous levels of global warming by continuing to consume large quantities of meat and dairy? The hardest part for dairy farmers is that public expectations don't always reflect buying habits and choices that consumers make. People say one thing, and we all do this, but we buy another. But that is not the key takeout of my speech to you today. Yes, veganism and questioning consumers is an issue for dairy, but it is not the biggest challenge. The bigger consumer trend is that milk, cow's milk, just doesn't fit with eating habits anymore, nor the lifestyles and desires of many consumers. And this is what I meant earlier when I said to you that the market for milk is evolving but not disappearing. Diets have globalized, and so have our choices about what to eat. We know we are no longer wedded to glasses of milk and the traditional breakfast habits of our childhood. And the case in point would be the breakfast buffet at the hotel this morning. Milk has lost its monopoly of our diets. My great-grandfather Frank wouldn't recognize half the food in our supermarkets or in our cafes, or even in our fridges. Food today is about convenience. It's about eating on the go, and it's about enjoyment. But milk has been slow to adapt to those trends and the desires of a new generation of consumers. 2-litre cartons of milk, as I showed you earlier, are not desirable. The good news is that dairy can adapt. Take the fermented milk brand, Beautiful Kefir. It's a drinkable product halfway between milk and yogurt. A 250 millilitre bottle, about that big, so pretty small, retails for £1. And its biggest consumer base? Slimming women. Exactly the consumer most likely to be avoiding dairy. It's now sold in UK supermarkets across the UK and has just expanded its capacity to 16 million bottles a year. Milk as a word does not matter to a new generation of consumers. It is the product being made with it that matters. That is what people are willing to buy and pay more for. They're not paying more for milk, they're paying more for Beautiful Kefir. And this is what I mean again when I tell you that the market for milk is evolving but not disappearing. People focus on volumes in milk. That seems to be the obsession. But what is volume without value for dairy farmers at the bottom of the supply chain? Is that the life and career to inspire the next generation of dairy producers? What should matter most is value. And by value, I mean how much people are willing to pay for something or prioritize spending that little bit extra on it over something else, something that they don't do with milk at the moment, something they don't have to do with milk at the moment, something that they've never done with milk. or certainly in our lifetimes, everyone in this room. Turning milk into a valuable and desirable product is the only sustainable future for dairy in the UK, or for the liquid milk category anyway. The vehicle for that, for adding value and making desirable products, is brands. A branded milk drink is not green, red, or blue top milk. And it's not Tesco own brand milk either. A brand is a unique product that has been produced by a particular business under a particular name. I've already mentioned one in Boterville Kefir. Other ones would be Graham's Gold Jersey, a Scottish company, very successful one, and the specialist milk for coffee brand, the Estate Dairy, a very successful one sold in most independent coffee shops in London. Or Fairlife, the Coca-Cola-owned milk brand that started in the US in 2014, has recently expanded to Canada. Branded milk as a category is driving growth in the liquid milk category, with a total value of sales up 4% last year and volumes up 50%. So why, you might ask, why are brands successful? Well, partly it's because they're the ones innovating. So going back to my point about the importance of brands and innovation. Brands are the ones innovating. And by that I mean producing a new drink product that consumers are willing to pay more for. Unfortunately, there is not yet enough of them in the milk category. One of the people that I interviewed during my research was Sainsbury's Head of Agriculture, Beth Hart, and she told me, "Every day we're getting approached by a new product as an alternative to milk. The alternative milk category is full of bright entrepreneurs who I wish would come to dairy too. Milk has not changed, but the category has." Something that has happened since I started my Nuffield Scholarship has been AHDB and Dairy UK's joint consumer campaign, a £2 million consumer campaign. So it's funded by dairy farmers and the dairy industry together. Now, there's no doubt that generic campaigns can make farmers and dairy lovers feel good. But the only accurate measure of success is sales and the value of sales, neither of which the dairy campaign, however clever and amusing that it is, can prove to have affected. The industry has to accept that it is not going to get more people drinking milk again. That is the past. Its ambition should be to make consumers value, desire, and pay more for milk and dairy. That is the only successful way forward for the sector. And the only successful way of doing that is brands and innovation, not generic campaigns like this. My great-grandfather Frank's own future in dairy got taken away from him. He lost a lung in a gas attack during the First World War. But if Frank was here today, I'd tell him to find the entrepreneur, the company, or the supply chain collaborators that can help turn his milk into a branded product. It's what the Braids family, a current Nuffield scholar, are doing in Lancashire with their specialist milk for coffee brand. And it's what Yo Valley and Graham's Dairy have been trying to do with their respective milk brands and expanded product ranges. Only brands, to repeat myself for the 6th or 7th time, are going to have any success in closing the value gap on liquid milk. The choice for the dairy sector, or for dairy producers, is you can allow retailers to remain the arbitrator of your future, or you can take ownership of it yourself. Thank you for listening. Thank you to the Nuffield Trust and my sponsors, the Trehane Trust, for giving me the opportunity to undertake the scholarship and for all your help replying to emails and various things over the past few years. And most importantly, thank you to my son Ethan back home, who's not here today, who tells me that I'm still his friend, as a 3.5-year-old tends to say, despite all the time I've spent away or busy researching and writing over the past 2 years. So thank you to him, and thank you to everyone for coming today.